Hello friends, about 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video. I still remember the night like it happened yesterday, and I swear to you I have been out on the road for years hauling loads from one end of the country to the other, and nothing ever made my skin crawl the way that night did. I had left the truck stop a little past midnight, and the highway stretched out in front of me like a black ribbon twisting under the pale glow of the moon. I had that feeling in my gut, the one you get when something is just not right. Like the road itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to step into whatever it had planned. I kept telling myself it was just the lack of sleep. Because let me tell you, when you drive long enough, your mind plays tricks on you. Shadows look like figures. Headlights flash like ghostly eyes staring back at you. But this night was different, and I knew it. The moment I saw the fog rolling in from the tree line, it was thick and heavy, and I thought it was odd because the weather had been clear all day. No sign of rain, no sign of mist, just a clean sky, and then suddenly this wall of fog, like someone dropped a curtain right across the asphalt. I slowed down to about 30 and kept my high beams on, but the light just bounced off that white haze like it was alive, pushing back at me instead of cutting through. I gripped the wheel tighter and leaned forward. And that was when I noticed something moving just at the edge of the road. At first I thought it was a deer, because that is common enough out there, but the way it moved was wrong, too slow, too deliberate, and too tall. I could only catch glimpses through the breaks in the fog, a shape that seemed to glide instead of step, and every time I blinked it looked closer to the truck. I wanted to shake it off, tell myself it was just shadows or my imagination. But then I saw it clearly, a figure standing on the shoulder, pale as the mist itself, with arms that seemed to hang longer than they should, and a head tilted slightly like it was studying me. I hit the horn without thinking, and the sound roared into the night. But the thing did not move, it just stood there staring, and I swear my chest went tight like the air got sucked right out of the cab. I pressed harder on the gas, trying to get out of there, faster, but the fog seemed endless. And when I glanced back into the mirror, I thought I saw the figure standing right in the middle of the road behind me, not shrinking away, not fading, just watching. And that was the moment I realized I had crossed into something far darker than just a lonely highway at night. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, but the more miles I put between me and that figure, the heavier the air inside the cab seemed to get, like the fog had seeped right through the vents and settled in my lungs. I cracked the window to let some air in, and the sound that came through was not the steady roar of the wind you expect at highway speed. It was more like a low hum, almost like a voice stretched thin across the night. I turned the radio on, hoping some static or a late-night song would drown it out, but the dial just spun through empty channels, nothing but crackles and faint whispers that made my scalp prickle. I swear I could almost make out words in those whispers, like someone was trying to talk, but just out of reach of understanding. And the strangest part was the voice sounded familiar, like I had heard it before, but I could not place where. And that made me more nervous than anything, because it felt personal, like whoever or whatever was out there already knew me. I gripped the wheel tighter and focused on the painted lines flashing beneath the headlights. But then the lines started to warp. They looked like they were bending and curving in ways they should not, almost pulling me off the asphalt. And I had to blink hard and shake my head to clear it. My heart was pounding, and I told myself, maybe I was just more tired than I thought. Maybe I needed to pull over. But deep down, I knew stopping was the worst thing I could do. I kept pushing the rig forward, and then I noticed something ahead through the fog, a glow, faint at first, then brighter, like the lights of a gas station or a rest stop. I felt relief for a second, thinking I could finally get my bearings, maybe grab a cup of coffee and clear my head. But as I got closer, the glow did not look right. It was too orange, too flickering, like fire instead of electric lights, and the smell hit me. Before I even pulled up, a sharp, acrid smoke that burned my throat. I slowed down and rolled closer, and that was when I saw it clear in my headlights, an old diner sitting by the side of the road, its windows glowing like they were lit from inside by lanterns or maybe candles. The parking lot was empty. No cars, no trucks, no sign of life except for that fire like glow spilling through the glass. I thought about stopping because maybe somebody was inside. Maybe I could ask for directions or just be around another human being. But something about it felt off. The neon sign above the diner buzzed faintly, like it was trying to come to life, but the letters were broken, and the only word it managed to spell was die, with the rest of the letters flickering dead. I felt my stomach sink, and before I could even think about it, the CB radio crackled to life behind me, and a voice came through clear as day saying, "Do not stop here, keep driving." I froze when that voice came through the CB radio, because I swear to you I had not even touched the thing in hours, and the channel was set to static, the way I usually keep it when I am running solo. At night I did not know whether the voice was a warning or a trick, but the weight in those words cut through me sharp as a knife. "Do not stop here, keep driving," and my hand shook on the gear shift as I pushed the truck past that diner with its broken neon and fire-lit windows. And the further I rolled, the colder the air seemed to get, until it felt like I had opened the cab straight into a winter storm. Though the night outside was still summer warm, the windshield frosted at the edges like something breathing cold against the glass, and I had to keep wiping at it just to see the road. And every time I cleared a patch with my hand, I thought I saw shapes moving in the fog, like people standing there only to vanish when the wipers passed over them. The radio hissed again, and I braced myself, but this time no words came, only a long, low screech that built higher and higher, until it felt like it was drilling straight into my skull. I slammed the radio off, and the cab went silent, except for the rumble of the engine. But then, I realized I was not alone, I swear to you. I caught movement in the mirror behind my seat, just the faintest shadow shifting, like someone sitting in the sleeper berth. I did not dare turn all the way around because I knew if I looked too close, I might see something I could never unsee. So I kept my eyes forward and tried to convince myself it was the reflection of the passing fog. But the problem was, the fog had stopped moving altogether. It just hung there thick and dead still, like I was driving through a painting instead of real air. And when I looked down at the speedometer, I noticed the needle was stuck at 60. Even though I was pressing the pedal hard, the truck should have been pulling faster, but the needle would not budge, like I was trapped in some endless stretch of road that went nowhere. The hum returned faint under the wheels, and it took me a second to realize it was not coming from the tires. It was coming from underneath the cab, like something was running alongside me, unseen, scraping at the metal. And when I gritted my teeth and leaned forward, I saw fingers, yes, actual fingers, long, pale, and stretched, dragging up the side mirror from below, curling slow and deliberate until the tips tapped against the glass. I swerved hard to the left, trying to shake whatever it was, and the truck rattled like it might tip, but the fingers only curled tighter until I heard the faintest whisper pressed against the window. That same familiar voice saying my name in a tone that was both tender and cruel. Like someone who had known me my whole life, I felt the blood drain from my face, because I swear to you, I had never told my name to anyone on that highway that night. And still somehow the thing out there knew exactly who I was. I kept telling myself, just keep the wheels turning, just keep the engine alive. Because as long as that rumble sat under my feet, I was still in control and still in the world I knew. But no matter how hard I pressed the pedal, the highway just stretched, longer and longer ahead, like it was refusing to let me go. I do not know if you have ever had one of those nights where the road feels like it is swallowing you whole, like you drive past mile markers and billboards and exits, but nothing ever changes. Nothing feels real anymore. That was what I was in. Right then, the fog had thinned out just enough for me to see the faint edges of the road, but the darkness past the shoulder was thick like tar, and I swear I could feel eyes in it. Not headlights, not wildlife, not people. Just eyes, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all waiting in silence, and every once in a while, I would catch one of them glinting in the mirror or sliding across the windshield like something leaning too close, and I would jerk the wheel thinking I was about to hit something, but there would be nothing there. Just the endless hum of tires on asphalt, and the faint vibration of something crawling underneath the chassis, like nails dragging in rhythm with the wheels. I wanted so bad to grab the CB and scream into it for anyone at all to answer, but I was terrified that whatever voice came back would not be human. And after what I had already heard, I was not about to test that theory. So instead I tried. To distract myself, I thought about the diner back there and the way those windows glowed like fire, and the way that broken sign only spelled DI. And it hit me that maybe it was never meant to be a diner at all. Maybe the place only looked that Way to lure drivers like me in to make us pull off the road and walk straight into something we would never walk back out of. The thought made my chest tighten, and I could feel sweat rolling down the back of my neck, even though the air in the cab was freezing. And then came the smell. Not smoke this time, but something sour and heavy like rot crawling into my nose and coating my throat. I gagged and rolled the window all the way down, but the smell only grew stronger, as if it was riding the air itself. And when I glanced out into the side mirror, I saw what looked like a hitchhiker walking along the shoulder. I should have felt some relief, because a normal human being out there would have meant I was not losing my mind. But deep down, I already knew it was not a person. The figure was too thin, its stride too slow. Like each step bent the legs wrong and the arms dangled lower than they should, almost dragging the ground. I passed it fast and forced my eyes straight ahead, but not 30 seconds later I saw the same figure again on the shoulder, as if I had not passed it at all, as if it had jumped ahead waiting for me. I gritted my teeth and muttered to myself, not stopping, not stopping, not for anything. And I pressed the pedal harder, trying to make the truck roar, but no matter how fast I went, the figure kept showing up over and over, standing just inside the glow of the headlights, swaying like it was waiting for me to invite it in. And then I made the mistake of glancing at the passenger seat. I had kept it empty all night, not even my logbook sitting there. And yet in that moment, I swear there was someone sitting in it, a shape that pressed against the seat belt, as if it were buckled in the head, turned slowly toward me, and the outline was nothing but shadow, but the smile glowed pale wide and far too many teeth. I snapped my eyes forward again and gripped the wheel until my knuckles burned, refusing to look back, because I knew if I gave it more attention, it would become clearer. And if it became clearer, I might not survive seeing it in full. I do not know how long I drove like that, refusing to blink, refusing to breathe, just pushing the truck into the dark. But eventually the fog broke open and the road curved sharp to the right, and there in the distance was a gas station, bright lit and alive with neon, and I have never felt such relief in my life. I pulled in hard tires, squealing, and parked under the lights, and for the first time in hours I thought maybe, just maybe, I was safe. I sat there under the buzzing lights of that gas station lot, and I could hear the pump motors clicking and whining like they were running, though no one else was around. No cars, no attendants, no sound but the hum of the fluorescent bulbs and the slow creak of the wind pushing against the loose siding of the building. I wanted to believe this was just a regular stop, a place I could breathe in a little normal air and shake off whatever nightmare I had just driven through. But when I stepped down from the cab, the ground itself felt wrong, too soft, almost like the asphalt was rubber beneath my boots. I walked toward the door of the store, and the bell above it chimed as I pushed inside, but the sound echoed longer than it should have, dragging out like someone pulling a note on a violin. The aisles were stocked. The coolers hummed, the candy bars and chips sat neatly on the shelves, but there was no clerk behind the counter, just an empty stool and a register screen that flickered, with static like it was picking up a signal from nowhere. I called out hello, and my voice sounded strange in the air, like the store was swallowing the sound before it could bounce back to me. And that was when I noticed the clock on the wall. It was frozen at 3:17, the second hand twitching in place as if it wanted to move but could not. I felt every hair on my arm stand up, because I realized then that I had no idea what time it was outside. My watch had stopped too, and when I pulled out my phone, it would not even turn on. I told myself to grab a cup of coffee and head right back to the truck, but as I moved down the aisle, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I turned quick, but the aisle was empty, every shelf in place, every bag of chips sitting still. Not a soul in sight. I swallowed hard and kept moving, trying to pretend I did not hear it, but the steps followed, always a pace behind. No matter how fast I walked, I swung into the next aisle, ready to confront whatever was there. And for a second, my chest loosened because I saw someone at the end of the row, a man in a long coat facing the cooler doors. His head bent like he was reading the labels on the drinks. But when I took a step closer, I noticed he was not breathing, not shifting, not moving at all, just frozen in place, and when I blinked, he was gone. The cooler door swung open slow, and I swear, I saw a hand inside, pale and long, reaching out toward me. I bolted to the counter and slammed my hand on the register, shouting for someone, anyone, and the screen flickered brighter. then spelled out words across the static letters that burned into my mind. Get back in the truck. Now I did not argue. I shoved through the doors back, into the lot, and the night air hit me thick and sour. The pumps were still clicking, but now the numbers on them spun backward, rolling the price down instead of up, and the hoses twitched like snakes trying to slither free. I scrambled up into the cab, slammed the door, locked it tight, and jammed the key. But the truck was already running, though I know I had shut it off, and the radio was alive again, whispering low my name over and over like a chant. I stomped the pedal and tore out of that lot, headlights slicing through the dark, and as I looked in the side mirror, I saw the gas station fold in on itself, like paper crumpling, until it vanished into the fog, leaving nothing but empty road behind me. I tried not to think about it. I tried to focus on driving. But the longer I sat behind that wheel, the more it sank in, that the highway I was on was not the same one I had entered. It was like I had slipped into a different stretch of reality, one that fed on people like me. Truckers, alone at night, running endless miles with no one to back them up. And as that thought chewed at me, I realized the worst part of all the highway signs were changing. The letters twisted, bent, rearranging into words that were not towns, not exits, but warnings. Things like turn back and do not look and you are mine. And each time I passed one, the words burned into my brain a little deeper, and I started to wonder if the road was ever going to let me go or if I had already been claimed. I kept my foot steady on the pedal and my hands locked on the wheel. But the more I drove, the more I realized the road itself had stopped behaving like any highway I had ever known, because the painted lines wavered and shimmered like heat mirages, even though the night was cold, and I could not shake the feeling that the road was stretching itself, bending and folding into shapes that were impossible. The signs kept changing too, the green reflective surfaces turning black as I passed them, the words glowing white like chalk on a board, messages written just for me, and some of them called me by name. Some of them told me secrets about my past, things I had not spoken of in years, and when I passed one that spelled out the date my father died, my chest went tight because I knew then this was no trick of my mind. Something out there was inside me, pulling pieces out and laying them bare on the highway like a game, and I pressed the pedal harder, wanting to outrun it. But the speedometer needle stayed stuck at 60 again, no matter how deep my boot went into the floor, and the engine roared louder and louder until it did not even sound like a machine anymore. It sounded like a scream stretched across steel, and the whole cab shook, with it rattling so hard I thought the windshield would shatter, but somehow it held, and I kept rolling on, gripping that wheel until my fingers cramped, and then the radio came alive again, but this time not with whispers, not with my name, but with music faint and tinny like an old record player, scratchy and broken, a song my mother used to hum when I was a boy. And I swear to you, the sound of it in that cab nearly broke me, because I had not thought about her in years, and the way the melody floated through the static was so familiar and so warm that for just a second I wanted to close my eyes and let it take me. But deep down, I knew if I gave in, if I let that sound carry me, I would never open my eyes again, so I screamed to drown it out and slammed my hand against the dash until the song warped and twisted and turned into laughter. Cruel, sharp laughter that filled every inch of the cab, and as it died down, I heard a voice whisper soft right next to my ear, like someone was leaning over from the passenger seat saying, "You cannot fight forever." And when I dared a glance to my right, the seat was filled again, only this time, it was not just a shadow. It was clear as day. A man in a trucker's cap and a denim jacket sitting there, calm as could be, with his head turned toward me but no eyes in his sockets, just dark holes that seemed to stretch back forever, and that grin wide and thin, showing too many teeth. I almost veered off the road, trying not to look. But he leaned closer and said, plain as day, "You're on the lost highway now and there is no getting off." I shouted that he was lying, and I gripped the wheel tighter than ever, forcing my eyes forward. But the truth of it was sinking into me like ice water. I could feel it in the bones of the truck and the beat of the tires on the endless pavement, that this was not just a bad night, not just a trick of fatigue. I had driven onto a stretch of road that did not belong to the world I knew. And once you roll down that path, you do not just turn off at the next exit. You keep driving and driving until the road itself decides what to do with you. And brother, that was the moment I realized I might never see the end of this run. The man, or whatever he was sitting there in that passenger seat, did not vanish when I ignored him. He stayed right there, calm and still, staring with those empty sockets that seemed deeper than any cave I had ever seen. And the more I tried to keep my eyes on the road, the more I felt him leaning closer, his breath cold against the side of my neck, and the grin stretching wider than human lips should go. And I swear, it felt like every tooth in his mouth was scraping against the edge of my sanity. I kept muttering to myself, keep driving, because that was all I knew to do. But the more miles I put behind me, the stranger the highway became. The trees lining the sides of the road had vanished, replaced by walls of stone, like I was driving through a canyon and the sky above had no stars. Only a red glow pulsing slow, like the sky itself had a heartbeat. And every time it pulsed, the road beneath me shook and the lights on my dashboard flickered, and I wondered if maybe I was not even on Earth anymore. The thought crept in my head and stayed there, whispering that maybe this was not a nightmare or a hallucination. Maybe this was real, and I had crossed into some stretch of road meant for the dead, not the living. And as that thought grew heavier, the figure in the seat finally spoke again, his voice soft but sharp, like broken glass dragging across wood. He said, "You have been chosen to drive it now," and I clenched my jaw, trying not to answer. But something inside me made me ask, "Drive what?" And the grin stretched wider, and he said the road itself, and my stomach twisted, because the way he said it felt like a sentence, not an answer. I tried to tell him I was not interested, that I just wanted to deliver my load and get home, but he chuckled deep and low and said, "Home is a place you left behind long ago, and you ain't never getting back." The radio lit up again with that laughter I had heard earlier. Only now it was layered with voices, dozens maybe, hundreds, all laughing together until it felt like the cab was spinning, and I wanted to cover my ears, but I could not let go of the wheel. And then I noticed something ahead. A figure standing in the middle of the highway again. But this one was different. It was a woman in a long dress, her hair floating like it was underwater and her arms raised high, and I slammed the horn and braced myself to hit her. But as the truck roared through, she vanished into mist that swirled into the cab, filling my lungs cold and heavy until I was choking and coughing, and the shadow man beside me leaned close and whispered, "Breathe her in and let her take you." And I shoved the window down and gasped for real air, and the mist spilled out into the night, leaving me shaking and weak but still alive, still behind the wheel. And as I looked back up, I realized the canyon walls had closed in tighter, and the sky above was darker now. No glow, just black pressing down, and the highway kept winding deeper and deeper, like it was leading me straight into the belly of something ancient and alive. And I thought to myself, maybe I should have stopped at that diner. Maybe I should have risked it back there, because whatever I was on now felt like a run with no end. The deeper I went into that canyon, the stranger everything became, because the pavement beneath the truck was no longer smooth. It felt like cobblestones rattling the whole rig until the mirrors shook loose, and the dashboard lights flickered like candles in a storm, and I knew highways were not built this way. No interstate ever turned into something out of the 1800s, and yet my wheels were clattering across stones, slick with some dark shine like oil or blood. And every time I glanced down through the windshield, I thought I saw faces in those stones screaming up at me. Their mouths open wide, their eyes bulging like they had been trapped beneath the surface, pressed into the road itself to suffer forever. And I gripped that wheel so tight my hands hurt, because I knew if I lost control and rolled even one tire off the center, I might join them under there. And the man in the passenger seat was still with me, not saying much now, just watching with that grin stretching wider every mile until it seemed to split his cheeks, and I kept whispering to myself, "This is not real. This is not real." But the engine rumble under my boots felt too heavy, too sharp for any dream. And then the CB radio cracked to life again, only this time it was not laughter or whispers. It was a voice I knew, my old buddy Ron, a trucker I used to ride with years back before he wrecked outside Amarillo and never got up again. And hearing his voice crawl out of that static made every inch of my skin crawl, because he said plain as day, "Keep it straight. Keep your wheels between the lines or you will never get out." And I wanted to answer him, wanted to shout his name into the mic. But the second I reached for it, the shadow man chuckled and said, "Don't you dare, because if you speak to him, you will follow him to the grave." And I jerked my hand back and kept both fists on the wheel, sweat dripping down into my eyes and stinging like acid. And then the road tilted sharp left, and when I fought, the wheel around the headlights caught the walls of that canyon, and brother, I swear to you they were not rock. They were bodies stacked and pressed into the shape of cliffs, hundreds of them, thousands twisted together, eyes still open, and mouths frozen mid-scream, and when the truck roared past, they all turned their heads at once to look straight at me, every single one, and my vision blurred because no man should ever be seen by that many dead eyes at once. And the shadow man leaned close and whispered, "They are all drivers like you who never made it out," and I shouted, "Shut up, just shut up." But he only laughed, and the sound of it bounced off those walls until it felt like the canyon itself was mocking me. And the CB came, alive again, with Ron's voice begging me, "Don't stop, don't you dare stop, because if you stop, you'll be one of us." And I slammed the pedal down harder than I ever have before, and the truck screamed like the whole engine was tearing itself apart, and smoke billowed out the sides, but somehow the speedometer still read 60. Never more, never less, like the road itself decided how fast I could go, and I kept rolling, teeth clenched, eyes burning, and the canyon finally opened wider ahead. And I thought maybe I was through the worst of it, but that was when I saw the bridge, long, narrow, stretching out over a black void. No water, no land, just empty, nothing beneath it. And as the truck hit the first boards, the whole rig shuddered, and the wood groaned loud like bones breaking, and the shadow man finally leaned back, grinning with teeth that went too far back into his skull, and he said, "If you make it across, you belong to the road forever, and if you fall, you belong to what waits below." And I knew then I had no good choices left, only the wheel in my hands and the endless night waiting to see which one of us would win. That bridge stretched further than anything I had ever seen in my life, and the wooden planks beneath the weight of the truck screamed and popped like they were seconds from snapping clean through, and every vibration ran up my arms into my teeth and skull until I thought the fillings would shake loose, and I leaned forward with my chest tight, knowing if even one plank gave way, there was nothing waiting below me but endless black, and maybe worse, and the headlights cut through only so far, before the dark swallowed them whole, like the beams were being eaten by something alive. And I kept telling myself, "Do not look down. Do not look down." But when you are hundreds of feet above nothing, your eyes betray you. And sure enough, I glanced over the side, and I swear I saw movement in that black. Not shapes, not solid forms, but waves, like something huge was swimming in it, waiting for me to slip. And when I blinked, the black moved closer, rising up almost level with the bridge, like it was hungry and aware of me. And the shadow man in the seat beside me leaned his head back, laughing low, and said, "It likes you. It wants you. It has been waiting for someone like you for a very long time." And I grit my teeth and forced my eyes forward, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, whispering, "Just keep driving, just keep driving." And the CB cracked alive again, Ron's voice, but weaker this time, broken and strained, like it was dragging itself out of the grave, saying, "You cannot stop. You cannot. Look back, keep it dead center, or it will take you too." And I shouted into the empty cab that I was not going to let it take me. And I pressed the pedal harder, even though the needle never rose above 60. The planks slammed beneath me one after another in rhythm with my heartbeat, and I could hear them snapping just behind the rear tires, breaking away and falling into the void. So if I slowed even 1 mile an hour, I knew the truck would be swallowed whole, and the bridge narrowed tighter, the guardrails bending in like claws, scraping the sides of the trailer, sparks flying and showering the mirrors with fire. And the shadow man leaned close, whispering softer now, almost tender, like a friend trying to convince me of something, saying, "You are already dead, you just do not know it yet." And I screamed at him to shut up, but he only grinned wider, those teeth gleaming in the dark, and the bridge kept going further and further until I thought maybe it would never end, like I had been, condemned to ride it forever. But then at last I saw a faint glow ahead. Not daylight, not headlights, but torches. Dozens of them lined up on either side of the road, and figures standing tall holding them. And as I thundered off the last planks onto solid ground again, I saw the faces of those figures, and my stomach turned to stone, because they were not people. They were husks, dried and hollow eyes like burned wood skin, cracked and blackened. Yet they moved in unison, raising their torches as, if in salute to me, the truck howled past them, and I could feel their heads turn to follow me, every single one. And the road beyond them stretched straight into darkness again. But this darkness felt different, thicker like smoke instead of air, and the second I passed through it, the torches vanished behind me and the bridge was gone like it had never existed. And I realized then the road was no longer bound by rules of space or distance. It was folding itself, twisting itself, building whatever it wanted ahead of me and tearing away what I left behind, and the shadow man whispered, "You see, now there is no going back, because the highway owns you." And my heart sank, because I knew he was right. The road stretched out flat, but the darkness ahead was not ordinary night. It was alive, shifting like heavy smoke, curling and sliding across the asphalt, and my high beams cut through only a few feet before the glow drowned and vanished like it had been swallowed whole. And I gripped the wheel tighter because I knew I was crossing into another one of those places that didn't belong to this world. And the shadow man beside me leaned in close, almost brushing my ear, and whispered things. I couldn't quite make out words layered over words like a dozen voices talking at once, and I tried to shake my head clear. But the more I fought, the more his voice dug in, and then I realized he wasn't whispering into my ear. He was whispering into my thoughts, crawling in like oil, and I shouted out loud to drown him out and pressed harder on the pedal. But no matter how hard I pushed, the truck wouldn't climb above 60. The same cursed ceiling that mocked me every single time I hit these stretches of road, and my chest burned with frustration because I knew I should have ditched that CB radio back at the truck stop when it first started whispering Ron's dead voice into me. But it felt like no matter what I did, the highway would have kept pulling me back here, like some invisible chain was looped around my axle, dragging me into its pit. And suddenly I saw headlights ahead, faint and flickering, like a rig coming toward me through the haze. And I leaned forward, eyes wide, because it had been days, maybe weeks, since I'd seen another living soul on this road. And the closer the lights came, the more I thought, maybe I wasn't alone. Maybe another driver had found this cursed stretch. But as the glow broke through the smoke, I realized those weren't headlights. They were eyes, massive, glowing yellow eyes set far apart and high above the road, like something towering was walking straight down the center lane toward me. And my gut dropped so hard I thought I'd puke, and the shadow man chuckled low and deep, saying, "You are going to meet it now, the one that hunts all who enter." And I swerved the wheel, but the road had tightened its grip. The asphalt itself seemed to lock my tires in straight. I couldn't move left or right. All I could do was barrel forward directly into whatever those eyes belonged to. And as I closed the gap, I saw its shape unfurl massive limbs that bent the wrong way. Long arms dragging claws across the pavement, leaving sparks raining in the dark. Its mouth stretched two wide teeth like rebar, rusted and jagged. And the thing leaned down to meet me, and I felt every instinct in my body scream to stop. But the pedal locked under my foot, frozen to the floor, the truck screaming forward, and the creature's mouth opened wide enough to swallow the cab whole. And inside its throat was not flesh, but swirling black road lined with broken guardrails and shattered asphalt, like its body was made of pieces of highways that had already been devoured. And the CB lit up with Ron's voice again, faint and desperate, saying, "Do not let it take you, fight it, or you will never leave." And I braced myself, slamming both hands on the wheel, screaming as the truck roared into that waiting throat, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't sitting in the cab anymore. I was standing barefoot on cold, wet asphalt under a sky that had no stars and no moon, only a heavy red haze that stretched forever. And my truck was gone, no rig, no trailer, nothing but endless road and the smell of burnt rubber and smoke in the air. And when I looked down, the center lines were still glowing faint, like they had just been painted with fresh molten paint, and I heard engines in the distance, low and guttural, not like any diesel I had ever heard, more like growls, and they echoed across the empty stretch until the sound shook in my chest, and I turned slowly, expecting headlights to cut through the haze. But what I saw instead froze every drop of blood in me, because coming down the road were trucks, but not trucks like mine. They were twisted hulks of steel, bent and mangled, like they had been pulled out of wreckage yards and welded back together, with claws for wheels and teeth where the grills should be, and each one screamed as it rolled, sparks showering from broken axles. Yet somehow they moved faster than anything I had ever seen, barreling toward me in a pack like wolves. And at the wheel of the first one I saw a driver, or at least I thought it was a driver until the haze cleared a little, and I saw its face, or what was left of it, a skull wrapped in stretched leather skin, mouth open, two wide eyes burning like furnace fire, and its hands clamped around the wheel were nothing but bone and wire. And when it saw me standing there, it let out a shriek, like tires locking on asphalt, and the pack all roared together, closing in, and I turned and ran faster than I knew I could, legs pounding the glowing lines and the haze burning my lungs, and the shadow man's voice chased me, whispering, You cannot outrun them. This is their road now. You are trespassing, and I wanted to scream back at him, but I didn't waste the breath. I kept running until my feet bled and every breath tore at my ribs and the pack was closing closer. The sound of metal claws shredding the asphalt behind me, sparks stinging my back, and I saw a glow ahead. A faint blue light different from the haze, sharp and cold like real daylight, and I pushed everything I had into reaching it. Lungs burning, legs shaking until I stumbled through the light and crashed to my knees on solid ground again. And when I looked up, I was back in my cab, hands on the wheel, engine humming steady like nothing had happened. The road stretched out normal ahead of me and the stars above clear and sharp like any other night. But my hands were wet with blood. And when I looked down, my bare feet were raw, torn to ribbons, against the pedals and the floor mat, and I knew then it hadn't been a dream. It hadn't been some trick of the dark, because the road had marked me. It had dragged me somewhere else and spit me back out, and the CB lit again. Faint static rolling, and then Ron's voice came clearer than ever. Low and steady like he was sitting right behind me, and he said, "It does not let go once it takes you." And the line went dead. And I sat there shaking hands, trembling on the wheel, because I knew he was right. I was owned now by this highway, and every mile I drove from here on wasn't my choice. It was just waiting for the next place it wanted to show me. I kept driving after that night, because what else was I supposed to do? A man doesn't just pull over and wait for death to knock on his window, so I stayed on the pedal mile after mile. But the strangest thing was, I never saw a single exit. No gas station, no rest stop, no green signs promising towns off the shoulder. Only black ribbon cutting through the dark, and the more I rolled, the more I realized this road wasn't about distance, it was about patience. It wanted me to keep feeding it time until I forgot what the real world looked like, and that was when I saw the hitchhiker standing, dead center in the right lane. A tall figure in a dirty jacket, one arm hanging stiff and the other waving slow and steady, and I slammed the brakes, hard air brakes, howling steel, shaking. But when the truck groaned to a halt, the figure didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept his arm raised, and I felt my chest tighten, because every bone in me knew I should not open that door. But something colder whispered that I already would, and sure enough, my hand pulled the latch before my brain could catch it. And when the door swung wide, the man climbed in without a word, sliding onto the passenger seat like he belonged there. His face was pale, stretched too tight, lips split from dryness, and his eyes glowed faint like old headlights left on too long, and he turned that glow on me and said, "Real calm. Keep driving." And I swallowed hard, pressing back on the gas, because what else could I do? And the truck rolled on smooth, like it had never braked. And after a while he spoke again, saying, "I used to run this stretch too. Thought I could beat it, thought I could own the road, but the road owned me, and now it owns you." And he turned his head toward me, slow and stiff, and I saw the hole in his temple, round and black and dry, and I realized his skull was caved from a shotgun blast, but somehow he was still riding, still talking, and I wanted to scream. But he put one cracked finger to his lips and whispered, "Don't wake them. They are sleeping under the asphalt." And I forced my eyes back to the windshield. But the second he said it, I felt it. Vibrations deep below the tires, like something massive shifting awake, and I thought maybe it was just my mind breaking, until the center lines ahead started to pulse, faint yellow like veins, pumping light through the blacktop, and the hitchhiker leaned back, closing his eyes like he was settling into a long ride, and said, "It's too late, they know you now." And sure enough, the rumble under my wheels grew louder, until the whole rig shook, like an earthquake rolling beneath me, and the road cracked wide in my mirrors, asphalt splitting open to show red fire and crawling shapes. Too many legs, too many teeth dragging themselves upward. But every time I tried to slow, the hitchhiker whispered, keep driving, or they'll take us both." And the shadow man in the back seat laughed low and cruel, saying, "You see how it begins now. You see how many of us are chained to it." And I pressed harder on the gas pedal, praying the 60 ceiling would break. But the needle mocked me again and again, and the cracks in the road grew wider and closer until I thought the whole stretch would fall into the pit and swallow me whole. And that was when the hitchhiker leaned close. His lips cracked, bleeding, and said the only way out is through, but through means worse than this. The hitchhiker's words echoed through me, and I knew there wasn't any turning back. So I kept the truck steady, hands locked on the wheel, heart beating so loud I thought it might blow my chest open, and the road ahead began to change the yellow, lines twisting into symbols carved into the asphalt, glowing brighter and brighter, until the whole highway burned like fire beneath me. And the air outside thickened into smoke and shapes pressed against the windows. Faces screaming, mouths stretched, wide but silent. And the shadow man leaned forward between us, his teeth shining, and he whispered, "You've reached the end, but the end is only the beginning." And the hitchhiker laughed a dry, broken laugh before vanishing into thin air, leaving the seat empty and cracked with rot like it had been there for centuries. And the CB sparked alive one last time. Ron's voice, clear, strong, desperate, saying, "Don't let it win. Don't give it your name. Because once you speak your name here, it owns you forever." And I clenched my jaw, refusing to answer, refusing to say anything, but the highway already knew I was fighting it. And the whole rig shook so hard, the mirrors shattered glass raining across my lap, and the smoke outside parted to show a wall of black ahead, not a tunnel, not a curve, just a void like the end of the world waiting for me. And I knew there was no choice either. I drove into it, or I stopped, and let the things crawling under the asphalt drag me screaming into their pit. So I gripped the wheel, leaned forward, and said nothing. No name, no words, and I drove straight into that black, and for a heartbeat there was nothing, no sound, no engine, no breath, only silence. And then just as sudden headlights cut across my eyes, and I was back on I-40 westbound, sun rising pale over the desert radio, humming static-free like a normal morning, and my truck rolled clean 65, smooth and easy, like none of it had ever happened. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see myself in the driver's seat. I saw the hitchhiker's pale, cracked face staring back at me, grinning wide. And I knew then the road hadn't let me go. It had just found a new way to keep me rolling. And maybe that's why I'm telling you all this, because if you ever find yourself on a stretch of highway that feels too empty, too long, too quiet, you better keep your name buried deep inside your chest. And whatever you do, don't stop for anyone, because once this road takes you, it never gives you back.